It's powerful and must read, what's it about, and where does it fit into the Powerless series? I'm going to be telling you everything spoiler free about this book in today's video. Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Charlene and this is my little YouTube channel where I talk mainly about books but also with a little bit of travel and lifestyle as well. And in today's video I'm going to be giving you a spoiler free review of Powerful by Lauren Roberts. Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well and that you've had a good week. As I just said in my little intro there, in today's video I'm going to be giving a spoiler-free review of Powerful by Lauren Roberts. But before I go into all of those details, I just want to give you a quick couple of details about the book, so I'm going to start with the blurb. So, a sizzling and heart-racing new story set in the kingdom of Ilya. Adina and Paydin have always been inseparable. Fate brought them together when they were young, but friendship ensured that they would always protect each other and the home they built in the slums of Lut. But now, Paydin, an ordinary, has been selected for the Persian trials, which means almost certain death. Now alone in Lut, Adina must fend for herself. After attempting to steal is a mysterious man from the market who comes to her rescue. Mac's shadowy past and secretive power sets him apart from the other low-level elites of Lut, and as the pair team up to see their loved ones before the trials, the quest tests their loyalty, their love, and their lives. And I'm also just going to give you the average rating for this on Goodreads, which is 4.12 for this book. As I said in my intro as well, I'm going to be going into where this book fits into the Powerless series, what's it even about, and is it worth reading? So I'm going to start with talking to you a little bit more about the plot of this book. Obviously, I've just read you the blurb, which gives you quite a good idea of what's going on. But I want to expand on this and where it fits into the Powerless series. So as far as I understand it, there is a Powerless trilogy, which starts with Powerless, then goes on to Reckless, and then goes on to Fearless. But there are an additional 2 books as well that have kind of fit in between those books. The first one being Powerful. So Powerful is book 1.5, which means if you're reading the complete series, which I am, you start with Powerless, then you go on to Powerful before moving on to Reckless. Then it becomes Fearless and then Fearful. So I hope that makes sense for you in terms of what order to read the books. But just to expand a little bit more about the plot. Obviously, we've just read there a little bit about the blurb, and I just want to say that if you haven't already read Powerless, I think if you read up on Powerful, it might give a little bit too much away about what happens in Powerless. So if you haven't yet read that, maybe stop here, read that first, and then come back when you have read that, because I think if I read and go into the more detail about this book, I think it will give you too much away about what actually happens in the end of Powerless. But for those of you that are still watching who have read Powerless and want to move on to Powerful, the coast is now clear. So the story of Powerful takes place at the same time as the story of Powerless. It's just that this book is written from Adina's perspective. So for those of you that have read Powerless, you will know that Adina is a character in this story. The main characters, I would say, in Powerless are Paydin Grey and Kai Azza. There are some other very central characters as well, but those are our main characters in Powerless. Adina is Paydin Grey's best friend, who she lives with in the slums of Lut. And that is whose perspective this book is written from. So this book happens at the exact same time and place as Powerless. It's just that this is happening from Adina's perspective, while this is happening from Paydin Grey's perspective. Which is why I think the book is quite a lot shorter as well, because we don't need a retelling of everything that happens in this. We just need to fill in the gaps of the things that Paydin didn't see and experience while she was kind of like, you know, everything that was happening in the trials. This was happening on the outside in Lut with her best friend Adina. So, as the blurb suggests there are 2 main characters in this book, and that is Adina and also a man that she meets called Mac, who is a bit of a mysterious man. But this is the story of what happens to Adina during the time between when Paydin leaves for the trials and when we hopefully all know what happened to her at the end of Powerless, which is an absolutely heartbreaking situation. So this book fills in that gap, and it is, I'm not going to lie, it is an absolutely heart-wrenching story. For those of you that don't know much about Adina, you find out so much more about her backstory in this book. You find out why she has come to be in the position that she's in. and also why Mac has come to be in the position that he's in as well. And you learn a little bit about their life stories and, like I said, the backstory into what has led them into this point in their life, why they're living on the streets, why they're struggling, why they're having to thieve to get by day to day. And it is a really heartbreaking story. I think everything that is told from Adina's perspective is at the same time so heartbreaking but also so hopeful, because as a character Adina is such a hopeful character and she always sees the sunny side in every situation, even if it's a bad situation. So while Payden Grey is away at the trials, at the purging trials in the Powerless book, Adina is trying to fend for herself. And basically what happens as soon as Payden leaves is that she commits a petty crime which sees her in trouble almost immediately. So leading on from her petty crime situation, she kind of flees and runs into a character called Mac. Mac kind of helps to save her in that situation, and he also has a little bit more for her in store than she would originally have thought. So he actually has something that he's been planning, a little proposal for her and a little plan in mind, which he really needs Adina's help for. So he enrolls Adina in this plan that he has in mind, which I won't tell you too much about because I think it will give too much away about the story. But basically they are kind of on the side of the resistance in the whole Powerless story. And he has set up something that he really needs Adina's help with. And during this time, you see Adina and Max spending so much more time together and their lives kind of tying together and their relationship becoming so much stronger, and her needing Mac to rely on when she hasn't got paid in there. Obviously, for those of you that know what happens at the end of Powerless, you know what happens to Adina, and that is absolutely heartbreaking. And at the end of Powerless, I think you've got a pretty good idea of why that happens, and I think it is really very little to do with Adina herself and more to do with Payden and the King's thoughts about Payden. But you see the lead up to that happening, and that is really, really heartbreaking. It's a very tragic read. And just as in Powerless, there is a lot of sentences and prose in this story that are absolutely beautiful. There are a lot of times when I was reading this that I had a bit of a gulp in my throat, or, you know, I read a sentence and I was like, wow, that's absolutely stunning. So that is basically the story of Powerful. It's Adina's account of what happens to her in between Payden leaving for the trials and the end of what happens to Adina at the end of Powerless, how she got into that situation, the build up to it, and really what it kind of expands and gives a little bit more meat on the bones to that storyline, and it tells you a little bit more information about why that happened to her. As I just mentioned as well, characters wise, there are only really two central characters to this story, and that is Adina and Mac. So Adina, like I said, is Payden Grey's best friend. She's used to living on the streets of Loot and thieving for a living, and obviously we know her as a seamstress as well, because in the Powerless book she is Payden's best friend but also her own personal seamstress who makes all of her clothes and everything for her. So we see her on the outside world trying to, you know, make her clothes and get by with her passion and just live the most honest life that she can. And we find out so much more about Adina in this story. We find out more about her life story, we find out more about her personality, her likes, her dislikes, what she looks like everything more about her personality. And I think the one thing that I was drawn to the most about Adina was just this warmth and this sunniness that she's described as having. Like with Payden, she's quite like witty and quite sharp and cold in certain aspects, but Adina is completely the opposite. She's described as like the sunshine and as honey and as warm golden things, and I think that really, really comes through in this book. And you learn that Adina has been keeping Payden going this whole time as well as the other way around because of her warmth and her love and her hopefulness. So she's one of the main characters in Powerful. The other main character is Mac. So Mac is a completely new character to Powerful. He wasn't in the Powerless books. And he is the mysterious stranger that saves Adina on the streets after she commits her little silly crime. And he is somebody that is brand new to the story. Like I said, he's very mysterious. And in parts, he does remind me of Kai, who is one of the main characters in Powerless. But he has got a lot more grit and quite a tragic backstory, which I guess Kai does have as well. But he is basically the unexpected person that comes into this story that ends up being Adina's backbone and Adina's kind of rock during this whole story. There are some really heavy themes in this book. It's only a very short book. I should have said this right at the beginning, but I think it's got 245 pages, something like that. Let me just double check that. Yeah, 245 pages. So this is a very short story. And like I said, it's really here to fill in the gaps of the Powerless story. But themes wise, there's a lot of heaviness that goes on in this book because it's about the lead up to the thing that happens to Adina, and it's about her tragic life as well. So there are themes of like loss. There's lots of themes of grief, of death, of things like that. And also, I guess there could be triggers for people in some of the things that happens to Adina. Like there's stories of abuse and things like that. So maybe if those things are triggers for you, just have a little look into Powerful before you read it. But there are also themes of friendship, of love, of unexpected love, of hopefulness, and even till the end of the very end of the book, which we know what happens to Adina, even then she's full of this light and this life and this sunshine and hopefulness. So I think that's something that you can really take away from the book, is that kind of warmth and hopefulness. After I read this book, I didn't really know too much what I felt about it because it is like a retelling of the story that I just read and did really, really love. But then also the more I've been sitting on it and thinking about it, I did actually really enjoy experiencing it from another angle because it adds a little bit more meat on the bone and gives you a little bit more context into what's happening both with the plot and the characters. And it also gives you a little bit more context about the area of Lut and Ilya and the place that they live and just the history of it as well. It kind of makes it seem a bit more of a full picture. So I did really like that part of it. I do think it's not an absolute necessity to read this book. If you want to just keep it to the Powerless trilogy, I think you probably can do that. But for me, I'm really happy that I did read Powerful because, like I said, it just fleshes everything out a little bit more and it gives me more context of what's happening with all of the characters really, including Paydin, and also with the king and with the royal family as well. I just feel a little bit more like I understand what's going on and what kind of people that we're dealing with. So for me, I am actually really glad that I read this story. When I finished reading it, I went onto Goodreads and I had a little look at people's reviews and what people thought. And it was a little bit of a mixed bag. There were people being like, this book was completely unnecessary and I didn't enjoy it and blah, 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 this and that. But then there were a lot of other people who were like, this book absolutely ripped my heart out. It was soul destroying. I will never get over this. It's traumatizing, this and that. And I think I'm somewhere kind of not in the middle, because I don't think at all this book is pointless, but I think like I really, really did enjoy it, and I did find part of it really, really traumatizing and really tragic and really heartbreaking. But at the same time, I don't think it's an absolute necessity that you have to read this book before moving on to the rest of the trilogy. Having said that, I'm only on Reckless at the moment, which is official book 2. So I don't know, maybe the characters in this book will come a little bit more into play further down the series. And if that is the case, I will let you know further on. But right now I'm feeling like I'm glad that I read this book, but I also don't think that you absolutely have to read this book if you're not really feeling it. All in all, it was a quick read. I was going to say light. It's not really that light because although that there's that like warmth and happiness and hopefulness to it, there is also so much trauma and tragedy and leading up to Adina's end story. I think, yeah, I can't possibly describe this as light. There are some very heavy themes and things that happen in this book, and it is actually quite tragic in places. So I don't think I can say that, but it was a quick read and it allowed me to stay in the Powerless mindset and in that world that I was enjoying so much. So I have really enjoyed reading it, but for me, it wasn't as good as Powerless, and I scored Powerless a 4 out of 5 stars. So I think that today, having kind of like beared in mind everything that I was talking to you about, I think that I'm going to score Powerful a 3.5 out of 5 stars. If you have read Powerful, please let me know spoiler free in the comments what you thought. Did you think that it was a must read? Did you think that it was absolutely incredible and epic and heartbreaking and traumatizing? Or were you on the other side of the camp that thinks that like this is a story that didn't really need to happen? I'd be really intrigued to know what other people think of this, because like I said, I'm really glad that I read it and I'm glad that it fleshed out the story a little bit for me, but I don't think it's absolutely crucial to move on to this book instead of going straight on to Reckless. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching this video, and let me know, by the way, if you've got any other suggestions for me. I'm reading the Powerless series at the moment and I'm really enjoying it, but I'm kind of racing through it. So if you have any other fantasy or romantasy recommendations for me, or anything else for that matter, then please do let me know. But thank you so much for watching this video. I would love you forever if you give me a little like and a little follow and subscribe. I've got some very exciting things coming up and exciting videos on the way, so you'll have to make sure that you're subscribed for those. But thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.